Hello everyone. Today we're talking with Andre Achtstaetter. He has deep consumer finance experience with roles in fintech, banking, insurance sectors in different countries, many different countries actually. So Andre has opportunities now. He oh, he's trying to start startup in fintech field, so it would be double interesting to talk with him as a future startupper, as a current startupper. So hello, Andrea. Would would you share a couple of words about your experience? You has really huge amount of countries where you have worked. How has that happened, and also how long have you been in fintech industry already, and how have you came to it?
Yeah, great. Now, look, with pleasure. But first of all, thanks for having me today. Thanks for the invitation, and I'm happy to answer your questions. Look, looking at the experience so far in fintech and in the bank, I can say that from my experience looking back, working in 7 countries, I believe everything that you do, even if it's tech or other industries you work in, it's a people business. So basically, what I learned the most was that you need to speak the language of the people to be able to understand the culture. What does that mean? That means you need to think about the habits that you have in each and every country, the behaviors, the consumer behavior, which might be, even if you have, let me talk about an experience that I made in Czech Republic and Slovakia, that you might have totally different needs of customers or behaviors going from Czech Republic to Slovakia. The same when you go to Austria. And this is something I think you can only understand when you learn a language. So one of the key takeaways I can say from traveling the world, living in the country, because I really lived there and started to learn the language, sometimes successful, sometimes less successful, I have to admit. I have to say the key, and this is what I would say to everyone who is 20 to 30 years old, if you have the chance to work in another market, in another country, learn the language, live there, and understand the consumer, the customer behavior, because this is key.
Could you share a little bit what did you do there in those countries? Was it some within one company, or was it different companies?
Yeah, I mean the longest experience I had with Unicredit, working in several countries for them. This started with projects abroad, for example in Romania, and ended in managing directly the retail arm of the Slovak bank in Slovakia, as well as the same in Czech Republic, which means in Prague, which means the just to give you an idea, Unicredit is run by the headquarter in Milano. The CEE headquarter was in Austria back in 2014, which changed now to Milano. So one of the major takeaways was aligning with the headquarters, with those 2 headquarters, but at the same time thinking local. And I think this is basically something that was the beautiful challenge that I faced. On the other hand, it was kind of tough to keep the balance between the local interests, seeing things local, and then also doing things on a group level, on a group view. So this was basically one of the beautiful challenges that I had. And I have to say, especially those markets, Slovakia and Czech Republic, I learned that you need to live there. I lived there. You need to live there. You also need to understand the language. I started to learn. Unfortunately, this was one of my failures in my life. I never managed to speak fluently Slovak and Czech, but I can understand a lot. With other countries where I lived, like Italy, I had the pleasure and the support to learn, let's say, 4 to 5 hours a day in the first 5 months, which makes my life easier than when going into the region and managing a region there. So basically, to sum this up, from my time in Italy until the positions in Czech Republic and Slovakia, I think it was all about language, because systems you can learn, systems you need to you need to use all day. But I think it's more about understanding the situation of the bank in the respective country, and this is one of the beautiful challenges I had, and one of the great takeaways. Focusing also with this knowledge on the customer in each and every country, because every customer behavior and habit was different.
The question is that, for example, we have spoken in Russia with an expert about Asian markets, and he also, like you, was living in Vietnam and countries like that, and he actually said that you need to have some local consultants to help you to understand their market and stuff like that. And so the question is, why, for example, UniCredit decided to send you there and to instead of hiring someone local?
I think there's an as well, and not an either or. And I'm telling you why. Look, you always need a strong team in place to have someone who, let's say, politically, because I basically, I more or less represented the investor UniCredit who acquired the banks, and who was building the bridge to the headquarters. So I think you need both. You need those who are building the bridge to the headquarter and the people in the country, and you need those who are those people on the ground who really know the basics and the specifics of each and every market. Just one example: when I look back at my time in Slovakia, I had a very, very strong first line regional managers, as well as some kind of COOs and project team members who knew the specifics of the Slovak market, which is something I would most probably learn in 10 years or 15. But to be able to manage it, you need to trust your first line, you need to trust your team, because my experience is that the return on trust is always higher than those who take advantage of you. And especially in such a relationship, when you go to a country where you don't speak the language, you need to make sure that you have the right team in place. So to come back to your question, I don't think there's an either or. Why didn't we take a local instead of? I think there's an as well, because I see a lot of complementary effects in such a relationship.
Sounds very logical. Yeah, I haven't thought about it. And can you share some differences between, for example, what have surprised you, or maybe something that's different in behavior of the people in, for example, Czech Republic, in Slovakia, and Italy and Germany, for example? Some key differences maybe to take into account.
Yeah, sure. Look, I mean, you're mentioning typical European countries that are totally different. I mean, look, just starting with the Germans. I'm German all my life, so I mean, we Germans are kind of strange because we love cash. I mean, just to let you understand, I'm having my credit cards in my wallet, and I have an extra wallet with cash, because I was born and raised like this, and most probably until the next generation it will stay like this. So this is one of the habits that are saying something about the culture and the specifics of a market. And as you can see now in my example, this is the average in the German market, because Germans consider having cash as freedom. In other countries, they're open to just use the card, but this is also, and now again, to understand the culture, you also need to look back. You need to look a little bit deeper. Where does this country come from? And we had East Germany. People were under certain control, and having the Deutschmark was something that gave people freedom. And if there's a connection with this, then people have emotion and are passionate about this. So and this is something, again, you only understand when you work in those countries. Yeah, basically, this is one of the major things I can say. I wouldn't use now as next example Czech Republic and Slovakia, since I already spoke about them a lot. I would use Italy. I mean, one of my experiences was that when Germans meet, and during the financial crisis, I was in Italy. I just started, and my Italian was good enough to understand all of the customers. So when Lehman happened and the financial crisis started, what I learned was that the Italians solve everything or most of the topics while having a coffee. Germans need to sit down for 2 hours, having a meeting, discussing point 1 to 38, and then worst case, we postpone the meeting and someone is writing notes. The Italians are passionate about the topic they talk about. They come to the branch, they say what they like or don't like. And then if you make a deal with them, you go outside to the coffee store, you have you take a quick coffee in 5 minutes, so not like 30 like Germans do. You take a coffee, you discuss your most important topics while having the coffee, you take a decision, you walk out and you say ciao. And that's it. And that's how it works. So basically, this is also one of the beauties in Germany. Germans sometimes prefer, and I was in a lot of post-merger integration situations. And just to give you a funny example, Germans prefer the written email with 50 questions that need to be discussed and answered before we make a call. I was sitting next to Italian colleagues who opened the email with those 50 questions, and they said, "But what the hell? What does he want? I'm giving him a call." So basically, I turned this guy down. I said, "Look, just answer the questions, but give him additionally the call because he's German. He needs that." On the other hand, if I had something that I needed to solve with my Italian colleagues, I picked up the phone. They said, "Fly to Milano, let's discuss, and then we find a solution." So I think, again, this is language, but it's also about the behaviors of the, let me call them Europeans, which are not Europeans at all, who are totally different in behavior and habits. And I think this is something we need to understand when we go into a market. I can never say this worked in this country or that country, and let's use this as a best practice, because on PowerPoint and in Excel, everything looks great. And in every Excel that I've seen, there's a hockey stick. The question is, what is the future giving us? What is the real situation in the country? And I think the truth is happening when you're there. And this is where you learn the most.
I absolutely agree with that. So how to avoid then such a situation with a hockey stick in the future? I mean, do you mean that people should do much more in researches, investigations about the markets where they want to operate, instead of just trying to work on every market in the world, thinking that they are similar in behavior?
I mean, look at the big players. A lot of people thought like, there's this blueprint, we use this in each and every country. The reality is, regulation is different in each and every country. Customer needs are totally different in each and every country. And third, data management is totally different in each and every country. Now we try to align, but in the end, also the sentiment about data is a totally different one. So I think this is something we need to focus on, to have a good relationship with a regulator in each and every country. And you need locals for that. To understand customer needs, which needs to be determined by locals. You can have research, it's fine. But research is just one source. You need to understand what's going on there, also through partnerships, because I strongly believe in partnerships. And then you need to make sure that you turn the data you have in each and every country into valuable information. And I think this is something which will be key in the future. And this is something I personally also invest in platforms, but also in AI, artificial intelligence, machine learning, and in companies who use this as a mobile first or even mobile only option. So basically, this is something where I see the future going to, and the trends I see there, basically.
Talking about the differences, by the way, what do you think about European banks, especially maybe banks in England. For example, in Russia, because banks are so young, they use any modern technologies, and there is almost no space for fintech startups. And the banks in Russia has a lot of money to compete with almost any fintech company. What would be in Europe in near future maybe? Will those European old-fashioned banks realize that they are losing the market? Will they change something in their behavior and their strategies, or there are still a lot of place for fintech startups?
I think both. First of all, the banks will realize that the market changes. I think they already did. They already do, because you see a lot of projects they have internally, and we also had a lot of projects, a lot of digital projects back in UniCredit. And what I see is that we need to distinguish here, because some fintechs, when started internally in big banks, were used as an onboarding channel. So you created something that looked from outside beautiful, with the same terrible process that you had since 20 years with the old systems that grew through acquisitions, through M&A situations. So I know some banks where when you want to open a current account, you need to open 8 systems in parallel. And this cannot be the future. And this also describes the customer journey now physically in the branch. If you sit there and opening a current account means 90 minutes or 1 hour even, or 45 minutes, that's not how it should be in 2020, right? So basically what I see is that distinguishing now that the bank should move from using the fintechs as onboarding channel as standalone partners. It needs to be a standalone business. And here's also the challenge for the fintechs now, because looking at the fintechs or at the challenger banks, you see huge valuations with some challenger banks. The question is, if they would go to the stock market, if they would receive the same money. I strongly doubt that, because this is again Excel, the hockey stick, ISC. I believe that they bring a lot of value in UI, UX, customer journey, customer experience. Nevertheless, I think a lot of them are still finding their way in answering the question, how do we finally make money? And I think by just being the sexiest on the market, but not making money, this will end in changing the name, or the valuation will go down soon. And to prevent this, I believe that with the technology they have, they can make a difference when partnering up with the banks. So there's no either or. Again, I strongly believe in as well. They should work hand in hand, working on mobile-only solutions, serving the similar or same customer with the technology they have. Because let's not forget, look at the big banks. The big banks have all the data. And somehow the big banks don't really manage to turn this into a valuable information. Some do more, some do less. Then a fintech comes, has this scoring approach, which is much better. I think here is the perception of how do I create value from a fintech or banking point of view, where we can bring them together. And this is what I basically believe in. And I believe in systems that are not monolithic. I believe in systems where you can plug in, plug out, and renew technology, because the technology today will be outdated in 6 months when you start a fintech, or in 8 months, or in 10 months. You never know who's coming to the market, who just puts you aside and you vanish. And I mean, we've seen a lot of examples in the telco industry, and the market accelerates. And this is how I see basically the market acting. You need to make sure that you have microservices, and with those microservices, you need to be able to stay in the market, using the data you have, turning them into information, making them valuable for extended offerings with banks that speak to your customer journey. I think this will be the key in the future.
And speaking about how banks are going to work with startups, do you see some differences in different countries, or maybe some new things coming in Germany? I mean, for example, in Russia, in some banks, no, not all of them, but they have in-house accelerators. They search for startups, they accelerate them, then they partner with them using their technology, paying some fees and or maybe percentage for some, maybe some commission and stuff like that. I mean, what's going on in Europe with the European banks if they realize that something changing? Do they do such a things? How they are going to partner up with all these new startups?
Yeah, I think they already do. I mean, you see even third-party multi-level marketing companies working together now using tools from fintechs. You see banks cooperating with fintechs. You see insurance companies cooperating with fintechs. And why? I mean, let's go back. I mean, I think in the last years, we've seen a rise of design and innovation. And this basically means, I mean, look, there's a constant revolution in terms of user experience. And the banks coming from the old systems, they're not able to manage this. They could be, but I mean, we also need to be fair here. When you grew and you have a market value of 30 billion, you have a lot of decision-making layers that you need to walk through. You have a lot of IT legacy issues that you just cannot say, let's burn everything and build it new, because thousands of people are depending on you having this technology. So basically, I understand that the decision to go to a fintech, to search for a partnership, is something that puts them on another level, lets them also use their old IT infrastructure, but through cooperation with fintechs, they're able to also process data in a different way, data and algorithms. I mean, look, another point is you have new data sources. We make progress in machine learning, automation, and AI, and this influences everything. The scoring of the customers, and then you go into behavioral scoring and all these topics. I think to build this from scratch in a bank is kind of tough, and I strongly believe that through cooperation, through partnerships, you can make a difference. And again, to be fair, being a fintech that is fully focused on smartphones, which means mobile first, mobile only. If you are in a board position in a bank let's say in one of the top 10 banks in the world, you cannot just say, let's just do retail banking now through a smartphone app. I think the other board members would kill you, because they have thousands of people working for them in their stream, in their silos, and you are endangering their future. So I think having this outsourced, and I'm a big fan also of outsourcing such services to a fintech who knows what they're doing, can make a difference. And again, I mean, just look at customer segments, and everybody talks about millennials. I mean, what was typical about them, and this didn't speak to the services the bank was offering. Digital natives, they want always full transparency, anytime, anywhere, flexibility, and full control. Who of the traditional banks could give you this 10 years ago? Kind of hard to find. So basically, I think the fintechs, this is basically the point where a fintech is creating the most value.
Mm-hmm. The question about mobile apps, probably you know that in Asia, for example, there are big, huge trend for super apps, and actually Russian banks adopt this trend, and they attract a lot of partners to this application to create some kind of lifestyle banking apps, and where you can buy something, where you can do almost everything, like platform for apps. And what's happening in Europe in that case? Do you think that trend would come to some of the countries, or maybe not? And
look, I think the trend is already coming. Nevertheless, let me start a little bit different. I think we will see apps that include much more services. not only banking services, but additional services that just are complementary. You will find them in their app. Why? Because they're convenient. And I believe in, I mean, let's take Amazon Prime, for example. Amazon Prime, you sometimes you buy out of intuition because it's fast and the service is amazing. I mean, yeah, I can give you examples, but I'm not here to make advertising for Amazon. But I'm just saying this is a service level behind, and there's something that they understand about the customer, and this goes back to data. And I think the more industries you connect in an app with similar services that are complementary, I believe that you learn the most out of your customer relationship, and you can make it much more valuable, not only for yourself but also for the customer. And I think this is something when looking now, especially at old traditional banks. I mean, I met bankers who are coming from the old world, looking at bank statements, reading them, understanding customer needs, and I met bankers who are just used to use a CRM system that if it's yeah, I mean, if you fill it with the wrong data, it doesn't give you all the information. And I think this is one of the major topics when talking about those apps. Those apps should contain all behavioral data and hard data also from the several industries that you can connect. And I see also this trend coming in Germany uh, and in Europe. Nevertheless, I see also another trend coming. I mean, just look at Facebook and Amazon and the potential offerings they have. I mean, when you we talk fintech, let's talk about the tech fins. Those who are already those tech players who are huge, have big pockets for M&A activity. I think those are the ones we should also look at, and not only at the fintechs and the banks. There are tech fins coming into this game, and they might change everything.
Yeah, with all that coins within Facebook, and they really have an audience, huge audience, which they know a lot about this audience too, and they know how to use the data. But by the way, uh, can you share some maybe companies which impressed you within last months, couple of last months, by what they do?
Oh, that's a hard one because there are a lot of companies impressing me. I mean, look, I'm always impressed when you find something that creates value for customers, and this doesn't necessarily need to be in the fintech industry. It can be a company that, for example, enables people to walk again after an accident because they plant a chip into your head. I visited some companies like this when I was studying in the US and made my study trips and spoke to those companies. I believe in innovation, and not only service innovation, but also in topics that are making the life of people better. And this is what attracts me about technology. Definitely machine learning, artificial intelligence, but as I mentioned, also something that directly is influencing the quality of people's life.
Mhm. Important question about people's life, wealth, personal wealth management. As we both know, the rates in banks are actually not so high, and so a lot of people searching for different opportunities. And what would that be? Are there already a lot of players who offer some solutions to make more money, as from bank deposits, or maybe there are free area to create something? What do you think about this situation actually?
About investing, look, from my experience, it depends on the investor, and I think this needs to be evaluated first. But when evaluated, I think there's a spectrum of opportunities from uh, savings plans to ETF plans, to stocks, bonds. I'm a fan of stocks. I like stocks a lot. because that's something that I understand. I read about it. I can find the information in a transparent way, in the most transparent way. Um, I would not recommend people who don't have the experience to yeah, to play with their money like in a casino with yeah, instruments they don't understand. And I think this is one of the most important advice I can give, because you should always understand what you're doing. And if you have a lever off 5, 10, you should also think about losing and not only about winning, because I've heard a lot of people already buying the huge villa, and some lost money. So I think this is one of the assets I invest. What I believe in is also investing in yourself, and this means in education, um, which is tangible afterwards, uh, as well as being an entrepreneur. So if you run or have multiple revenue streams, and one or two come from your own businesses, I think this is one of the most beautifulest things you can do, because you have it in your hand. You're responsible, and this is different to investing in a life insurance and to hopefully receive 3 or 4%, as we are happy in Germany. Well, it was like that back in the days when I made my life insurance contracts in 1998.
Well, that's pretty interesting thoughts. Also, also, I've had a question about if your current startup entrepreneur and you're researching what to do and where, what would you advise where to make some CASDEV? I don't know. Do you do some CASDEV, customer development, or you just visiting some meetups, trying to talk with different people to find some solutions, or you already know? Do you already know some problem which you're going to solve? As a fintech startupper, what would you advise to start from?
Yeah, I mean, in general, as a fintech startup, since we're not in that stage, and we're still just talking to investors, I would in general advise to make yourself seen. Go to meetups. If you want to start a fintech, you need to go to meetups. You need to make yourself seen in the press if you have the right contacts, but never overpromise. Better over deliver. I think this is one of the major messages I can just send. And I think discuss in the network, have mentors that are helping you, because if you have other people telling you their honest opinion, if you have those people in your environment, um, this is gold. This was always gold for me, because I have like 3, 4 mentors that I can call all the time, and they give me their opinion, their honest opinion, because they're not depending on me, or they're not having any benefit of me telling them something or them telling me something. So basically, I believe always check and reflect. This makes a lot of sense, and very simple. Just do and execute. Because I've seen, again, I want to go back. I've seen a lot of people doing PowerPoint, beautiful, and the best analysis ever, and people spending 100 slides on this and that and best practice, and the perfect business plan is then also attached with the hockey stick. Um, uh, what I would do is I would execute. I would look at it, I would learn from it, discuss it, but in the end, it's all about execution. Execution and having the discipline to stay on track, because this makes the difference. And I think this is also something where the market for entrepreneurs lets entrepreneurs win if they are in the right position. And I think this will also be much more needed in now we're coming back to traditional banks, in having people inside to understand when to be more entrepreneurial, and how to be an entrepreneur. Because everybody talks about being an entrepreneur in a company. It's different when you're responsible, when it's your money that you use. So basically, this is something I would advise: execute with discipline and just do it.
Yeah, absolutely agree. Practice. uh, just constant practice is very important. You can find some solutions even if they don't work in current situation. They might work for you in the future. They might help you. So anyway, that's very good advice. What do you think about the remote working? These days everybody work remotely, but do you think would it be forever, or is it still some magic which occurs in the walls of the offices?
Very clear opinion. I think if you're online or mobile, you are definitely a winner. And look, there was again, I mean, how often did you hear the word digital in the past? A lot of people talk about being digital, being mobile, being online, having lean processes, fully automated. I think now this crisis shows us who's really mobile, who's really online, because those are the winners. And um, again, this is about talking about something or walking the talk. And I see here that this is just the beginning. And look, I mean, we're living in great times. We're living in times where you can start a business from a desk somewhere in whatever country, and you can be successful in another country, having the right licenses in place, obviously, but you can be a top entrepreneur doing whatever you want from where you want. I mean, the generations before, they didn't have this opportunity. You can go out there, you can run a market, you can become a big player by sitting on your computer and starting something seriously. So basically, I'm happy that I live in this year 2020, because even the last weeks taught me so much about what I can do, what I can accomplish just using what I have. I have a MacBook Air and my phone, and I do everything from my phone and my MacBook, and that's it. And you can talk to everyone worldwide, showing your business cases, discussing your business plans, creating a product. So again, I think those who are online and mobile, fully digital, end to end, those will be the winners. And I think we're just starting seeing the value of what we have right now.
That's absolutely right. You're absolutely right, because, for example, when I came back to Siberia from Berlin, there was a lot of meetups, and I've missed them very much here. But these days, there are a lot of online meetups, on online events where you can go ask everybody to, I don't know, you can add friends to everywhere. Everybody now more open to everyone. This is some benefits of these times, really. I think so too. Can you share some maybe mistakes or fails from your experience, if this is not a secret, for us to make some conclusions out of them, and where you made your own, which conclusions have you made out of them?
Look, I think failures happen, or should happen, all the time, because if not, we're not progressing. So I mean, I'm happy to share failures, because let's say, yeah, I mean, when I worked in the financial industry, we always tried to be as digital as possible. But I think I mentioned it in the beginning already. When you start something that has the value proposition of being digital, being online, being fast, being automated, and you use just a customer journey, so on the front it looks for the customer that this is something new, but internally you still use the same process. This is definitely one of the failures that we had when I look back being in the banking industry, because you were depending on the processes in the background, and this makes also being digital or being now leaner and faster and more convenient for the customer. This makes it hard, to be fair, also for the banks. This is one of the failures, I would say, but there's a huge learning out of it. You can partner up with fintechs or with tech companies that use your data and create a different value for the customer as well as for you. Second, I think one of the failures, and this is a personal one, is not learning the language. in each and every country where I worked, because as I mentioned before, when you learn the nuances of a language, the sentiment, the feelings, the habits, the behavior, I think this can only be transported when you understand the language. And just from my experience, I mean, when I compare for example, Slovakia, the Slovaks that I met in Bratislava and the Slovaks that I met in Košice, when we had company parties, the team from Košice was singing loud, and the Bratislava guys reminded me more of, let's say, closer to Austrians. So I believe now also talking to them in their language would change or will change the relationship. And this is why one of the failures, if you can call it failure, is I was not able to learn a fifth or sixth language because the first four were already taking a lot of space in my head.
Do you think you need to live there closer to those people, to live within the market which you're trying to reach, or is it enough just to learn languages and to speak with your partners on using those languages?
No, definitely. And that's what I did when I worked in Czech Republic and in Slovakia. I believe to understand the market, you need to live there. And I think flying in and out, talking in your mother language, in your native language, is not really helping. You really need to understand the market. Look, I mean, I read a lot of analysis for Russian markets, credit markets, fintech markets, and when I managed at Credit Tech, when I managed as part of the European Business Division, the Russian market, I need to be honest, I was happy that I had a great team there, and the team is still there because there are two approaches. I can come to you, to your market, and tell you that I know it better, which is something I would not recommend people to do. I recommend that you come, listen, and understand how to support the person building the bridge to the headquarter, giving IT resources to create this or that product, to make the product much more stable. But if I come to you and I tell you in Russia, because this worked in Spain, we should definitely have a look at it. But because this worked in Spain or in Georgia or in Liberia, I mean, the best practice we can read through, but then it needs a in-depth analysis. And if the local manager, the local managing director tells me, Andre, this doesn't make sense, then I would check, obviously, and I would challenge. But I think in the end, we should trust the people in the country. And look, I strongly believe in a term that I learned in the army: decentralized command. It's not the headquarter that is telling you what to do when you're somewhere in the field. It is you who's responsible when you landed in your zone with your 5, 6 people, with your team. It's you who runs this, and it's not someone sitting in whatever 3,000 kilometers away telling you, oh, by the way, there might be an enemy 200 meters away. No, it's you who runs this. So basically, and I think this is also an experience I made with companies. The great companies understand that decentralized command is needed, that you need strong leaders in the country who know about the legal and compliance issues, because I think these are key. Having a good experience with the regulator, the product, as well as the customer. And I believe now, apart from the language, there's an advantage that everyone has who lives in this market, because you're part of the consumer, of the consumers, basically. And yeah, so this is how I see the setup.
Mm-hmm. Well, thanks to your words, I realized that actually you need to well, always to try to be close to those people for whom you build your products, and you need to talk with them, you need to speak with them, you need to live closer to them, and etc. And just you need to learn a lot from them, to just not to think that you know everything better than everyone. Speaking with people, actually, very helpful thing. Well, I think we are running out of time because we need to make it limited. But I would love to, to talk 1 hour more, maybe other time. I'd like to thank you very much for the answers, for the honest answers, interesting answers to our questions. Unfortunately, we haven't spoken about every question that I had, but I hope you would find some time in the future to proceed with our conversation. Well, thanks. Bye.